at least it is justice now, and I hope that victims and survivors out there will know they can come forward now, and these people who perpetrated these dreadful crimes will end up like these people have been.
And why didn't you do more at the time?
Well, I did what I knew about, I have to say. I knew about one case, and I did talk, even meeting the police authorities as well, but the police authorities refused to meet me with the parents of one of these victims when they were upset that things weren't being progressed as far as the police were concerned and the CPS. They refused to do that. I met the police on my own, and I have to say there's one thing that's been said in the media today, and that is about some of the authorities at the time were saying that they felt that these were lifestyle choices that these little girls had taken. I didn't feel that at the time. I don't feel it now, and if there's any out there, they ought to come forward and we ought to get these people where they should be, and that's in jail.
So we've heard that charities did flag up concerns. Were you aware of any of this?
There was. I was aware in about 2004, but I had this was after I was approached by a family. I was aware of by an organisation called CROP, who were from Keighley actually at the time, but not aware of the scale of it all in Rotherham. But you can clearly see when you look at the J report how some of the authorities were aware, social services were aware, and they felt that some of the complaints coming in from the youth services were just creating more work for them, and they took little or no action. And quite frankly, these were not lifestyle choices of these little girls. This was criminal acts that were being taken there, and a lot of them ought to feel ashamed of themselves. But nonetheless, at least we've got the knowledge now that South Yorkshire Police and Rotherham Borough Council are dealing with these matters firmly.
So Kevin, thank you very much. We'll have to leave it there, but thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Well, the sheer scale of child sexual exploitation in Rotherham came to light from a report in 2014 by Professor Alexis Jay. She found that at least 1,400 children were subjected to appalling sexual abuse in Rotherham between 1997 and 2013.
But 3 women who'd been working with victims of such abuse back then had already tried to raise the alarm with the council, police and government ministers. They'd written letters advising them that, and told James Vincent they'd effectively been stopped from doing their jobs.
Every service that they had contact with let them down.
We've known about the Hussein brothers for well over a decade now.
And they were well known before I started working at Risky Business.
Rotherham knew this was going on, but nothing was done. Look North has spoken to 3 women who each tell their own story of speaking to the council and police about it over and over again. They say they were ignored. Adele Gladman was researching a project for the Home Office at Rotherham Council in the early 2000s. It didn't take her long to find out what was happening.
It was the first week that I started work. People were telling me about this family in Rotherham, what was happening. And as time went on, I heard it from more and more and more people.
Fleur Strong runs a charity which worked with parents in Rotherham.
We tried our hardest to tell people, but what we found was that we were continually being blocked. So we went to the police, we went to the local authority, we went up to the chief executive, we wrote to the Home Office.
So obviously I was raising concerns with the council, but I was also sharing information regularly with the police.
Jane Senior ran Risky Business, a project working with young girls in the town.
I think one of the upsetting things for everybody, you know, and for me is these children were telling the truth.
Repeated warnings were given to those who could have helped. A series of letters and evidence was given to the council and police, but no one listened. And Adele claims that worse than that, her research was changed.
I think when it became obvious that that was the information that was going to go back to the Home Office, attempts were made to cleanse the data, to change the research findings, to dilute them in some way.
They didn't want to have this dirty washing put out into the public. They didn't want to face up to the problems that they had.
I genuinely believed that the other professionals in Rotherham would work alongside me in addressing the criminal behaviour that was going on, but preventing further abuse. And the amount of effort that went into suppressing the research findings, it was shocking.
These 3 women tried to tell whoever they could what was going on. Had they been listened to, it could have been stopped over a decade ago.
The frustrating thing for me is that the evidence, which is the foundation of the current court case, was there 15 years ago.
When every institution that you are trying to tell will not listen to you, it is very difficult to know where to go next.
One of the things that one of the girls says to us is, nobody can ever change what happened to me, Jane. Nobody will ever make that go away, and it's going to be with me for the rest of my life.
We were the whistleblowers. It's just that they chose not to hear us. In fact, they chose to, in a way, get rid of us.
Strong words. Well, James Vincent put some of their allegations to police and the council this afternoon.
Are you undertaking any sort of investigation about what went wrong and if things were covered up in the past at the council?
There is still some work being done at looking at whether there are individuals who can be held to account. We know the failings were serious and widespread, and we also know that most of the senior people at the council, the entire senior management team and the senior political leadership team have all changed now, but there is still work ongoing. If there are people who need to be held to account in the council, then they will be.
As you're aware, obviously there's been referral to the Independent Police Complaints Commission. That's part of their ongoing investigation. At the same time, the Chief Constable has obviously commissioned the review by the National Crime Agency. Again, that's part of their work as well. Clearly, I can't go into the detail at the moment, but obviously that'll be picked up in the future as well.
Do you not want to apologise to the people that have been in court telling their story in the last couple of months, that this wasn't all out 15 to 10 years ago?
As I've done before, I've apologised before, and again, we recognise we've made mistakes and we're sorry for those mistakes that have been done. What we need to do, though, today is make sure that those mistakes we rectify, and we'll rectify that by making sure those that are responsible are brought to justice and make sure the criminal justice plays their part.
Well, the Independent Police Complaints Commission says it now has 55 ongoing investigations into how South Yorkshire Police dealt with child sexual exploitation, ranging from a failure to act to corruption. 26 police officers have been served notices advising that they are the subject of an investigation into their conduct, but there are still more than 100 allegations where officers haven't yet been identified. The South Yorkshire Police and Crime Commissioner Alan Billings joins us now. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. How could the police allow these men to get away with it, Dr. Billings?
Well, that's the extraordinary question. It simply beggars belief. This was a major scandal, and why people whose job was to recognise a crime didn't see this as a crime and act upon it is extraordinary. They didn't see these children as children, and they didn't see these victims as victims, and that's where it all went wrong.
And when you look at the facts, it gets worse. 26 officers have misconduct notices on them, another 100 not identified, and we assume they're still working for the force. How on earth can people have confidence in South Yorkshire Police?
Well, my job as Police and Crime Commissioner is to try to speed up that process. It's you're quite right there, with the Independent Police Complaints Commission at the moment, and we need those reports, their investigation, to be completed, because some officers will be exonerated and some will have to face serious charges. But until that work is actually done, you don't know how to act on that. How long do
you need, Dr. Billings? Because 18 months since the J report findings, when will these officers be held to account? You've got an opportunity now to say a date. What is it?
No, it's not up to me. That's the problem. It's with the IPCC. We're seeing them on Monday saying this is intolerable. You must investigate, you must bring your investigations to a conclusion, because we must be able to act in respect of these officers. But as yet, until they complete that work, we can't know who they are.
Alan Billings, for the moment, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening.
Some of the victims of child grooming in Rotherham have tonight finally got justice. 12 women who as children were sexually abused by the gang put themselves forward to be witnesses in this case and expose what was going on in the town. We can hear from one of them now. We can't identify her for legal reasons, and her words are from police interviews heard in court, which are performed here by an actress.
I first met Mad Ash when I think I was about 11. It was just before I went into care. At first we just only used to talk and hang round, and as he got to know who I were, after a certain period he started asking for sex off me, and I told him I didn't want to do it, He used to get nasty, dragging me by my hair or pieces of clothing what I had on into the churchyard where we were. I used to get punched, kicked. He did what he wanted till I did what he wanted. So to stop me from getting hurt all the time, I did as he pleased. And then after so long, he got his brother and friends involved. We had to do one thing with Mad Ash and straight after with his brother, and then between 3 and 4 of them having to do what they wanted to do with us. One day, I were in kids' home and one of them had climbed up drain pipe to the window where I were. That were Ash, and he climbed up, got in. It was in my room. I were begging and pleading with him to leave my room because I'd get into trouble, and he said, "I'll only leave if you come out with me now." So I ended up going out with him to get him out of my room. I didn't want to have sex. I was just getting pushed, my head banged into a wall. My hair was being ripped out. I thought I were going to end up, to be honest with you, I thought they would end up killing me.
So where did the grooming actually take place, and how wide was the web operated by the gang?
Phil Bodmer is live in Rotherham for us tonight. Phil.
Well, these survivors, Lara, were essentially traded like currency. These teenage girls lost their adolescence. The court heard how the abuse didn't just take place here in Rotherham, it was also trafficked out to Sheffield. One victim spoke emotionally about being taken to the northwest and abused there. Another said she was put in a boot of a car and taken to London for sex. Arshid, Basharat and Banaras Hussain ruled Rotherham, according to evidence heard during the 3-month trial. Their associates, Kurban Ali, Karen McGregor and Shelley Davis, helped facilitate the abuse. The jury was told police allowed them a free card to do what they wanted. One victim told the jury she came from a happy home until she met Basharat Hussain at 14. She later described being forced into sex on her 16th birthday at a disgusting flat on Clough Road. Much of the abuse took place around Rotherham, some in Sheffield. On another occasion at another address, the same woman talked about how she was blindfolded, tied up and had petrol poured on her feet while hearing other people nearby having sex. She said, "I was petrified. I thought I was going to die. I thought they were going to burn me." The trial heard Karen McGregor ran a Hansel and Gretel style house. Vulnerable girls were offered food, clothing and a roof over their heads. In return, they would have to pay their way and were pimped out for sex. One of the victims was just 12 years old when her mother discovered school exercise books hidden in a kitchen cupboard, detailing sexual activity with men of Pakistani heritage. They were abused in churchyards, lock-up garages and even public spaces. Another witness told the court she was taken to Blackpool on the pretext of delivering a parcel. The teenager explained how she was kept in a room above a restaurant and made to have sex with men on a daily basis over several months. The victims, now mostly in their 30s, say they've lived under the cloud of this scandal for too long, wondering if justice would ever be done. Tonight, with the perpetrators facing jail, their long wait is finally over. Well, Rotherham Council says today marks the beginning of that process and justice for the few. What they are asking is that anybody who feels they may be a victim of child exploitation to come forward. They say lessons have been learned and those concerns will be taken seriously. Harry, Lara.
Phil, thank you. Mohammed Shafiq is from the Ramadan Foundation. Good evening. You're a distant relative of 3 of the men. What's your reaction to today?
Well, it's been a long time coming. For 18 years, these girls have been abused, they've been raped, and they've been sexually exploited. Whilst the authorities, as we've heard tonight, Dr. Alan Binnings, refusing to even look at the fact that their police officers let down these girls. And finally today we've seen justice. So I'm very happy for them. I've met a number of them, ecstatic for them. And I hope that this gives them the closure that they need to rebuild their life and move on.
At the centre of all this has been the Pakistani community in Rotherham. How have they reacted to the build-up to this and to today as well?
Well, you know, 2014, when the first report came out, I was there at a protest. It was a protest called by the Pakistani community in Rotherham against grooming. I spoke at that. I was there last week, delivering a training course around child sexual exploitation. But we've got a problem. There's an overrepresentation of Pakistani men that, you know, get involved in these sort of crimes. And we as a community have to deal with this, because if we don't, then, you know, I don't see any difference between my daughters and the girls that were abused in this way. And we must confront it.
Mohammed, what can you do, though?
Well, I think more of the same. I think we need to be more vocal. There needs to be more awareness and training of the police and other people, and training for young people. But most important, we shouldn't differentiate between a Pakistani girl being abused and a white girl being abused. And in this case, it was the white girls that were being abused, and that's a form of racism.
Mohammed Shafiq, thank you very much for coming in tonight. Thank you.
Well, this case would never even have come to court if it wasn't for the Times journalist Andrew Norfolk. He wrote his first story exposing child grooming in Rotherham 5 years ago. He's been telling me how he uncovered the story.
I received over 200 confidential documents, and there was a culture laid bare. It showed for over a decade what had been going on there. There were the names of dozens and dozens of girls, the names of the men who were abusing them, the places they were being taken, where they were being picked up. The evidence was there. It was there in internal police reports, it was there in social services documents. It was A, this has been going on for this long, and B, you knew about it and you did nothing. And when we published that story, I was convinced there would just be an outcry that would lead immediately to all sorts of inquiries to try and understand what could possibly have gone so wrong.
Were you met by a brick wall every time you tried to find out exactly what was going on at Rotherham?
Rotherham Council tried to get a High Court injunction against us. South Yorkshire Police tried to prevent us from publishing the story that actually triggered this criminal inquiry. Rotherham Council tried to get a criminal investigation launched into who was supplying me with documents. In August 2013, we did what I've never done in my 26 years as a journalist, which is on the front page of the Times, we named a man, Arshid Hussain. We accused him of being a serial abuser of young girls. And this was a man who'd not even been questioned, let alone arrested or charged by the police at that stage. To have the evidence to persuade our lawyers that it was safe to do that meant that that evidence was completely overwhelming. Rotherham Council finally bowed to the pressure and commissioned what became the J inquiry, and an independent inquiry to look back through the books and understand what had happened. And as you know perfectly well, that made global headlines because she found that 1,400 girls had been abused over 13 years.
So, has justice been done?
I know that for some of them, they never believed that this day would come where they would actually see charges initially brought against the men who had ruined their childhoods, and then have the chance to stand in court and tell a jury what had happened to them, and critically to be believed. And the jury believed those accounts.
Some remarkable investigative journalism there from Andrew Norfolk. Well, here at BBC Look North, we say goodbye now to the BBC News Channel and viewers across the UK.
Goodbye.